Award season just got worse, and it's all the BAFTAs and BBC's fault. BAFTAs recently happened. Unfortunately, the biggest news story out of the BAFTAs was of Tourette's advocate John Davidson, a guest of the award show, and subject of the biopic I Swear, a film about his life and journey with Tourette's, involuntarily blurted out the N-word, while Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were presenting the award for Best Visual Effects. The incident was broadcast and was not edited out, despite it being a pre-recorded event, with other speeches being censored. We're breaking down the incident, the aftermath of it, some of the internet discourse, and I'm gonna put this out there. Some corners of the internet are trying to make this a disability versus black community issue. First of all, that is not the case because intersectionality is a thing. There are black people with disabilities and there are black people with Tourette's. There's a lot of layers and nuances when it comes to this conversation. Weaponizing disabilities to racist arguments is not gonna cut it. If this is an us versus them situation, it should be everyone versus the BBC and the BAFTAs. I'm gonna talk about the incident with that lens because again, there's a lot of nuances to this conversation, as well as a few historic wins for that evening, and a quick roundup of few of the winners. By the way, welcome to Tea and Popcorn, where we spill the tea on all things movies. I'm your host Megan, and welcome to this virtual tea party and movie club for the film girlies. And welcome to my award season series. Not gonna lie, I have smoked with the BBC and the BAFTAs. No pun intended. My biggest problem is how this incident has been handled from a production standpoint, a PR standpoint, and just an overall accommodation standpoint, because every single person in that room, whether it be a guest, a nominee, presenter, should feel comfortable, safe, and treated with respect. And these situations clearly did not happen because it was uncomfortable for Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo being on the receiving end from the slur, even though it was unintentional. Also, John Davidson, with Tourette's, it being a very misunderstood condition, who is now put in a very uncomfortable position. I just think they did a bad job protecting both parties. And there were disclaimers about Davidson's attendance, being that there will most likely be outbursts and foul language. According to Variety, there were multiple outbursts. BAFTA's host this year was Cumming, and he thanked the audience for their understanding after the outburst. Cumming said, "You may have noticed some strong language in the background. This can be a part of how Tourette's syndrome shows up for people as the film explores that experience. Thanks for your understanding and helping create a respectful space for everyone." And later in the ceremony, Cumming made a further statement. Tourette's syndrome is a disability and the tics you've heard tonight are involuntary, which means a person who has Tourette's syndrome has no control over their language. We apologize if you are offended tonight. Davidson did leave the second half of the ceremony, but I do want to talk about Alan Cumming's statements because I have a little bit of a problem with his verbiage here because his statements seem very PR, which is not necessarily his fault, but more so the fault of most likely the BBC and the BAFTAs themselves. That's if he did not write the statement or he was told by a stage manager to say it. And a stage manager did warn the audience beforehand. I don't like how it was framed as strong language because usually when I hear strong language, I just think the F-bomb. Maybe this is just semantics, but that's not where my mind goes to. Like the N-word is a slur. It's not just strong language. Slurs are slurs. There's also the phrase, "I'm sorry if you were offended tonight." I actually read this in a book called Next Conversation, where the author was talking about when you want to apologize, don't say the phrase, "sorry you got offended," or "sorry if this offended you," because it doesn't take accountability on your actions. And that's what people are looking for ultimately is accountability. Accountability for BAFTAs about how this situation went down, and accountability for the BBC. So let's break down BAFTA's apology, which happened on February 23rd, which is a day after the ceremony. At the BAFTA Film Awards last night, our guests heard very offensive language that carries incomparable trauma and pain for so many. We want to acknowledge the harm this has caused, address what happened, and apologize to all. One of our guests, John Davidson, MBE, has Tourette's syndrome and has devoted his life to educating and campaigning for better understanding of this condition. Tourette's syndrome causes involuntary verbal tics that the individual has no control over. Such tics are in no way a reflection of the individual's beliefs and are not intentional. John Davidson is an executive producer of the BAFTA-nominated film I Swear, which is based on his life experience. We take the duty of care to all our guests very seriously to start from a position of inclusion. We took measures to make those in attendance aware of the tics, announcing to the audience before the ceremony began and throughout that John was in the room and that they may hear strong language, involuntary noises, or movements during the ceremony. Early in the ceremony, a loud tic in the form of a profoundly offensive term was heard by many in the room. Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were on stage at the time, and we apologize unservingly to them and to all impacted. We would like to thank Michael and Delroy for their incredible dignity and professionalism. During the ceremony, John chose to leave the auditorium and watch the rest of the ceremony from a screen, and we would like to thank him for his dignity and consideration of others on what have should been a night of celebration for him. We take responsibility for putting our guests in a very difficult situation, and we apologize to all. We will learn from this and keep inclusion at the core of all we do, maintaining our belief in film and storytelling as a critical conduit for compassion and empathy. And I want to read the entire apology because a lot of social media publications are really cherry picking what they choose to add and creating engagement bait, leaving out the direct apology to Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo. And I was a victim to the rage bait, honestly, because I thought they hadn't mentioned Michael B. Jordan or Delroy Lindo. And I am glad that the BAFTAs acknowledged all parties, but they did not take accountability for keeping the slur in while still cutting out political messages and speeches. The film My Father's Shadow won for Outstanding British Debut. Akinola Davies Jr. ended his speech with Free Palestine, as well as other statements regarding the state of the world. It was a beautiful speech. It really was, and I'll play a clip actually.
And lastly, to all those whose parents migrated to obtain a better life for their children, to the economic migrant, the conflict migrant, those under occupation, dictatorship, persecution, and those experiencing genocide, you matter, your stories matter more than ever. Your dreams are an act of resistance. To those watching at home, archive your loved ones, archive your stories, yesterday, today, and forever. For Nigeria, for London, the Congo, Sudan, Free Palestine. Thank you.
So that was edited out with that 2-hour delay. The BBC does want to apologize for not editing out the slur in their coverage of the BAFTA. And I did get this news from BBC.com, so please take this with a grain of salt. I tried to find the statement from the source, so I did my best. A BBC spokesperson said, "We apologize as this was not edited prior to the broadcast and will now be removed from his version on BBC iPlayer." But the plot thickens. According to an exclusive from Deadline, Warner Brothers raised immediate concerns about the involuntary racial slur and requested it to be removed from the broadcast. And a source told Deadline that an executive from Warner Brothers made the complaint right after the incident happened. The source actually questions the version of the events that were given by the BBC and producer Penny Lane TV that said that the producers were unaware of what happened until it had been too late and the broadcast was already put out. However, BAFTA insiders said the conversation did take place. Deadline did ask BAFTA whether Warner Brothers' concerns were relayed, but the organization declined to comment, and Warner Brothers is said to be skeptical. This article also adds that the BBC removed the BAFTA Film Awards from iPlayer around 11:30 a.m. on Monday, 15 hours after the first broadcast, and the ceremony remained unavailable until Tuesday morning. British lawmakers are also getting involved. My goodness, this is such a mess. Of course, this is the biggest news in the entertainment commentary community. Heck, the internet, let's just be so for real. People are loving that the BBC and BAFTAs are being called out because I do have a history of exclusion.
What is so funny to me is that the BBC and BAFTA have not felt heat from black people like this before, because now they're messing with black Americans. The funny thing is to me that BBC have always played in black people's faces, but they were British black people, and we don't really have the numbers in the UK. We're like 2%, 3% of the country. There's not a lot of us, and we're not really that joint in standing on business. We're not very, as British people, we're more keep calm and carry on. We'll complain, but we won't stand on business. Whereas black Americans stand on business. And anytime BAFTA in the past has played in black people's faces, nothing has been done about it. Like, I remember 4 years ago, BAFTA didn't nominate anyone of color. So, like, and no one, like, nothing was done. Like, the thing is, to live in the UK as a non-white person, you kind of just have to get used to white people playing in your face. The racism is so real that I didn't realize how racist. I knew Britain was racist, but I didn't know how really racist Britain was until I moved to America. Because there's things that would perfectly slide in the UK that do not slide in America. Like, Black Americans do not play. I kind of love them for it. I kind of love them for standing on business in a way that we just can't. We don't have the numbers or the sensibility. Like, we're too polite. We're too British. Anyway, now that the BAFTAs have caused a fuss with Black Americans, they don't know peace. They don't know peace. I've already seen people, there's BAFTA America, by the way, and there's also BBC America. So, fuck around and find out. Because the thing is, we tried to tell you, I've spoken out against the BBC before, because in 2020, the BBC used a racial slur. They aired a racial slur on their news programming. A reporter said the N-word with the hard ER at like 9 a.m. in the morning. And I was like, this is offensive. And I did tweets about it and it went viral. And the BBC asked me to come on their Newsnight platform to debate the slur, and I refused to debate the slur because I was like, this is ridiculous, like, racism isn't up for debate. But yeah, that was only in 2020, and I thought they'd learn their lesson, but clearly not. So now, me living in America as a Black Brit, I'm watching the Black Americans just hold them accountable, and I kind of love it. Like, I kind of love it. I hope some real, I don't even need to hope. I know some real change will come from this. I've already seen talks of boycotting the next BAFTAs, and yeah, the one thing British people care about is Americans, whether they're Black, white, or other, and they don't want the smoke. And they're getting the smoke. Yes.
And this does feel like a straw that broke the camel's back situation, even though that straw is pretty big. There obviously has been a lot of discussions regarding the nuances of the incident itself, and also pointing out intersectionality and how John Davidson is being treated better since he is a white man. And we are starting to see that played out in the worst ways, when people are weaponizing disabilities and playing disability advocate as a gotcha for not only Black people, but people that were offended by the statements. There has been a lot of terrible arguments. I'm not going to even pretend to understand Tourette's fully. I can only speak from my perspective as a Black woman who, to my knowledge, is not neurodivergent. And my opinion is a slur is a slur is a slur, no matter where it comes from, whether it be intentional or unintentional. But I do want to share the perspective of my mutual Nico, who broke it down very well as someone with Tourette's.
Okay, so I have never talked about this on here, but I am someone who has Tourette syndrome. And before I get to the point, I just want to clear something up before people start playing detective on my videos, because I have gotten a lot of profile views since yesterday. Tourette is more than vocal tics. It includes repetitive movements, which for me may look like eye twitching, lip twitching, clearing my throat, repetitive noises with my mouth, and yes, repetitive phrases. Now I wanted to add to the controversy at the BAFTAs regarding John Davidson, Michael B. Jordan, and Delroy Lindo. And John has garnered a lot of sympathy from people due to having Tourette and being nominated for a film about his experiences with it. And while I appreciate people making an effort to bring understanding to something as complex as Tourette syndrome, like they should for any other disability, because yes, Tourette's does cause people to blurt out random stuff going off my own experience. I think it is important to highlight the problem with people insulting the intelligence of anyone who is upset by racism. If you know me, you know bringing awareness to disability is very important to me. So as someone who is disabled, I want to stress that we can bring awareness to disability without ignoring the very real harm and impact that words can have on people. Since the BAFTAs, I have witnessed a lot of gaslighting of people who are upset by the use of the slur, as if John Davidson having Tourette's invalidates the harm caused by racism, whether he meant it or not. And what makes it even more infuriating is the BBC's willingness to edit out political phrases, but not the slurs. In a time where bigotry and racism has only become more rampant, I find it unfair that people are not willing to extend that same sympathy for Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo in this situation. It's a messy situation, and invalidating the anger of those most affected by racism is racism in itself. Since commenting on this on another post, people have been playing detective on my profile and coming to the conclusion that just because I don't record my vocal stems, that must mean I don't have them, which further proves my point on people's ignorance here and shows that they lack the nuance to partake in these conversations and don't care about ableism as much as they pretend to. As someone who is deaf and autistic with Tourette's, I am always going to be an advocate for bringing awareness to disabilities. But please stop using our disabilities to invalidate the real harm of racism, because sympathy should go both ways in this situation. And at the same time, extending understanding to disability doesn't mean people affected by the use of the slur or forgiveness to anyone who says them. Because intentional or not, it doesn't take back the damage that is already done. And as far as I know, John Davidson hasn't formally apologized, which would be the right thing to do in this case.
So thank you, Nico, for your perspective and allowing me to share this clip. And give Nico a follow on TikTok because he does amazing film content and he's just such a sweet guy. So give him a follow. But I've said this multiple times. Two things can be true at once. John Davidson does not need to apologize for his disability. And the N-word is hurtful. John Davidson did do an exclusive interview with Variety sharing more about his experience regarding this BAFTA situation and his perspective and how he was mortified about the situation while explaining what Tourette's is. And he said in the interview that he did apologize to Delroy Lindo and Michael B. Jordan, as well as Center's production designer Hannah Beechler, who actually said that Alan Cumming's apology was a throwaway apology and claimed that the N-word was said 3 times. And one of them was directed at her after the show. I am very glad that Davidson did apologize to them, regardless of the intent. They really did deserve an apology because if it's directed towards them, that could be very hurtful. And being called slurs is not fun. Like, no one wants to be called out of their name, especially that. And we are talking the hard ER, just to clarify for anybody that's like, well, y'all say it. I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm just laughing because it's a ridiculous argument. Because I have seen that argument too. But I have the link to all of my sources in the description and the show notes if you want to take a look for yourself. I am going to continue talking about racism and other isms within the entertainment industry. It's almost more relevant now than ever, especially with this political climate. And these award ceremonies still have a long way to go. So until things completely change, we're going to continue talking about it. Let's be completely honest. It's actually very ignorant to avoid these conversations within the film commentary space. This situation really does overshadow the historic wins of the night. But since this was a heavier video, let's talk about something a little bit lighter. Sinners was the most awarded Black directed film in BAFTA's history, with 3 wins, which is very telling for the BAFTA's history, considering that it's 2026, but since it is the British Academy, they do like awarding their own quote-unquote. And Ryan Coogler made history for being the first Black person to win Best Original Screenplay. That deserves to be celebrated for the rest of the week. Ludwig Göransson won for Best Score, and Wami Masaku won for Best Supporting Actress. One Battle After Another won 6 awards, including Best Film, Best Director, and Adapted Screenplay for Paul Thomas Anderson. Hamnet won for 2 categories, including Outstanding British Film. Frankenstein won for Costume, Hair and Makeup, and Production Design. Jessie Buckley won for Leading Actress for Hamnet, which is unsurprising. She is like sweeping. My Father's Shadow wins for Outstanding Film Debut, as I mentioned before, but again, congrats to them. And Robert Aramayo won the EE Rising Star Award and Best Leading Actor for I Swear. And the Instagram account for No Context Culture actually did this breakdown of the acting awards and who's won. It's a mixed bag when it comes to award season, with the exception of Jessie Buckley for Best Actress, even though Rose Byrne did win the Golden Globe for musical or comedy. But it's a mixed bag for supporting actress and actor, with Tiana Taylor winning the Golden Globe, Amy Madigan winning the Critics' Choice, and Wami Masaku winning the BAFTAs. It's also a mixed bag when it comes to supporting actor, with Stellan Skarsgård winning the Golden Globe, Jacob Elordi winning the Critics' Choice, and Sean Penn winning the BAFTA. But the SAGs are coming up, and I do plan on covering it. I think we're going to get a better idea of who is most likely going to win the Oscar after the SAGs. So with all that being said, give this video a like if you like the vibes, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on the latest video. Check out my award season playlist if you need to be caught up on the award season tea, and I will see you at the next party. Bye-bye!